to or watching the audit today. Everybody can hear me, which is great. Got the questions pane over on your panel there, so feel free to ask as we go, and we'll make this a bit interactive. So we usually, we like to do a play. We're really going to dive into the system today to give you a look at what's going on. So if you, as you're coming in here, let me know where you are in the system. Are you a user? Are you on a trial? Or are you still thinking about trying the system out? We want to hear where you're at. Let us know. And if you're listening to this on the recording and you got a question that you have based on what we're talking about here, feel free to email me. My email address is mike@auditforit.com. You guys are all welcome to hit me up. Frank, are you showing your screen yet?
Yep, I have my screen open and it says it's showing, so hopefully you can see it.
All right. Okay, yep, it just popped up at me. Great. So with that said, Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment and let you introduce yourself. Take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here, everybody. Every week we try to do a different webinar for our audit community, whether you're, like Mike said, a subscriber or you're trialing the system. We know there's various people at different levels. Today we're not going to talk too much about the history of the product. We've recently had a lot of people ask questions about how we do things. People are interested in some of our solution, a little bit of that today, and I'm going to dive into a couple recent audits. I did a few different ones. I've got some success stories around a couple, which I'll describe. All this is really designed to give you some ideas of how to use the system, and in terms of an intro to myself here. I am an MSP in New Jersey, right? So we run Two River Technology Group. That's been in existence for about 14 years in the IT industry for over 20. Started out in the financial services world. That's a primary vertical of ours today within the MSP community. And two other items, of course, is Robin Robbins' Technology Marketing Toolkit. We've been in her Producers Club for over 8 years. Awesome community, great marketing, great peer, and a lot of support for the audit product. And also, we're a top OS-33 partner. We've been with them for about 4 years, and they are big fans of audit. They've pushed that into the hands of many of their partners, and a lot of them have achieved success in using it. So with that said, I guess the key takeaway here is that I walk the walk. I am an MSP, even though we founded we founded Audit. My day job is Two River Tech, so we're using the product, and hopefully you can gain some insight. Like Mike said, take permission to interrupt me as we go, and hopefully he'll do so. And I'd be happy to pause, answer any questions as we go through this, and hopefully it's a good interactive session. So with that said, Mike, I'm going to hop out of the usual. I'm going to jump straight into the application here. So let me just pop that open. There we go. So audit, we recommend that you kind of target one of your existing clients, pick them that you're going to do a QBR on, and then we'll walk you through it. We'll just do a live session with you. One of the things that Mike and I spoke about is actually reaching out to our partner community and finding somebody who would be willing to be a guinea pig, and we're looking at maybe doing that live on a future webinar. So kind of like almost a live onboarding call where we walk through somebody's client, we help them put together an audit and generate that report, and then maybe even follow up and find out how they did, in terms of presenting and to see if anything got sold. So with that said, I'm in the system here, key areas that you'll play within, and then we'll dive right into the audit. So first thing is going to be the templates. 27 items, what are they? Where did they come from? Can we customize those? So let's talk briefly about that. First, we give you 4 starter templates. Everybody, when they log into the system, has these. These are just a suggested collection of 27 items. They are by no means, the Bible. Score, which should be infrastructure, security, and managed support and services. These 3 each have 9 boxes, 9 times. So first and foremost, we've skinned that cat. We have this extra quadrant here, and feedback, we found that a lot of people were using telecom as an additional line item that wasn't necessarily wanted you to be able to disable that quadrant. So if you want to stick to 27 points and telecom's not your thing, you could disable. You don't really need to deal with that. I'll disable it. Other times I walk in and I find, an old beat up phone system. So great. I can show them how I could save them money usually on their telephone bill. And let's take some of that money and let's drop cloud services. So just an idea of how you can structure this using cost recovery. It's also about some of the customization. So in this version, infrastructure, security, and managed support and services are fixed quad. The opportunity in the future to customize those, but for now, we've provided you with some structure so that way you can get used to. That you see here again are our suggested template, but you're free to change all of those. So we're going to jump in and we're going to take a quick one of these audit items. I'm sorry, of any one of these starter templates. It'll create one over on the customs side. So now you'll see I actually have a view edit button. We click on that. What this will let you do is same exact template, right? Although we're all running MSPs, we each have a slightly different IT person. We'd highlight maybe different solutions available in our IT stack that we want to kind of prominently go into, say, infrastructure and click on edit. It's going to take us into this quadrant. And now we want to see it. Now, why is this important? Because efficiency is important when we're generating these things, right? And that's the quoting process, easy, right? You don't dread doing it. Well, for me and for many of us, so anything that I can do ahead of time to make this a quicker process in the end is something that we want to do. In order that you would probably present in, right? So for me personally, just as an example, is whether it's a NAS or cloud-based infrastructure, whatever. I always talk about that first. To me, that up. So I like to make that second here. So typically I'll pull that up and put that in like second place. And then if they don't have great disaster recovery solutions, then business continuity is going to be poor. So it kind of leads kind of go from there. The rest of this, it's really depending on what you want to see. Now, there are set up a template. I'll find out, oh, they're only using a 10100 switch. It should be gigabit. So I get to the part where we're going to do the actual audit. But for now, what you should simply do, if you're new to the system, you're setting a whole bunch on the side here. Remember, you're not trying to do forensic accounting here, right? If it's an existing client, you're trying to up. So I just had a call today with somebody that was asking me some questions about some of our solution stack, and a cloud-to-cloud backup product called Backupify. I think it's awesome because almost all of our clients use Exchange Online. A couple use the deficiencies in the actual backup that's built into Office 365. So, there's a product that we wanted to upsell. It's kind of like low-hanging fruit, but, across our client base, we added a couple $1,000s a month of ourselves to do a better job as an MSP. So in that case, if we're doing setting up a here and say, I'm going to remove disaster recovery plan. That's a little bit more of a generic item. Now, I'm going to start, and don't forget about the weighting. So here's a tip. If you come in here, you can set the weight at 3 for everything. Kind of tripped up and they don't know which way to go with this. Set everything to 3. You'll notice it's all the same color, right? And all the same shading. You want them in, and you've kind of picked the 9 that you're going to use the most often. Now ask yourself, which is a little bit more. Like if I was doing this, I'd say, well, clearly the server is pretty important, right? I'm going to think backup disaster recovery is pretty important. Cloud backup, I'm going to leave that in the middle. I'm going to leave the workstations in the middle. Land redundancy, maybe I'll say that's a 2, not quite as important. Sort of skew it so that way you are on the WAN redundancy failover. So when you're done, you would save this. I'm just going to go back. I'm not going to save it. Save that to collection, and you can clone as many as you'd like. So there might be other ones that you set up. One might say without. Maybe you have one that's more managed services. Maybe you even have a break fix template. So really, the sky's the limit there. Share with you at this point. Any questions, Mike? Just take a brief pause here and see if anybody has any questions in this section.
In this section, I got a couple of questions, but we're going to wait until you come to the point where it's we talk about it. So,
okay, cool.
You're all.
So that's the template. Oddities. So this is pretty simple. Basically, this is or client. To create a new one, you're simply going to say create a new auditee, and we can pieces really here are whether they're a client or a prospect, and also which template do you want to base the audit off of. Of this grouping that you selected before. So now hopefully you see the relevance of having a template, right? Otherwise, every time you went in and go through and pick all those 27 items and then remember what order did I usually like to put them in and how did I want to weight it. From here and then apply them to your audit, right? So I'm not going to create another and you jump into an audit trail. You can also see that you can get to the audit trail from any one of the prospects or clients by so we could say, hey, I want to see prospects only, or I want to see clients only. Let's go in the ideas around generating and creating audit items and summary statements, and then we'll go into a couple of mine that we can look at, and also one or two clients to look at from a QBR perspective. So actually that one's already completed, so that may not be a good example. Let's see, let's find another one here. So you'll notice that this one happens to be incomplete, and the first time blank, there will be no data in there, and it'll simply say, baseline plan for whatever the company name. Now, what I do ahead of time, before I set up my meeting to meet with the prospect, and for the audits. So ahead of time, we've pre-qualified the prospect. Paid for your time, you're going to get a definitely much more engaged prospect, right? Because they're paying for this, they are going to provide you with the information you ask for, and they are going to be attentive, right? So you have less tire kickers. You also have less leads that you do, but to be honest with you, it's less running around and wasting your time. So do with it what you will. If you want to give it away for prior to the meeting, what I do is I generate a fact finder. So I have an 11-page fact finder. It's branded for the company, has my logo on it, and this is what I show up with. So when I go back to my original roots, so let's talk about that for a second. There was a time when there were no data. Remember, it was the early days when I was in MSP, and if somebody said, "Hey, I'm interested in your services," I'd show up with a pad. I really didn't have a process that I followed, but I know I asked a lot of questions, and I know that I took a lot of notes, and I took, I don't know if I took pictures quite as much back then, because, we didn't really have the cameras on the phones, but I know I drew a lot of pictures of the environment, and I would come back, and I would usually put together, right? So I didn't have a great way to, say, gather a lot of technical data. But, I used to sit down at the workstation. So, if I sat down at 5 out of 20 workstations and, they weren't really patched and there was no AV, I was always pretty certain that I'm going to find the same thing across the rest. So do I really need to go to every single workstation? Back then, I used to run into more servers, right? So I used to spend a little bit more time sitting at the server. And then there was a time when data collection tools started to become popular. And a lot of people jumped on those, myself included, and it was great because it kind of crawled the server, it looked across the network, and it gathered a lot of it. It would generate reports. And so it was easy, right? Suddenly I didn't have to try to cobble together a report and create a proposal. Suddenly I had these reports that I could start to use. And I started doing that, but then I started to realize that these reports were really, really technical in nature. And I started realizing that I wasn't spending as much time talking to the prospects and really doing the fact finding like I used to. That used to lead to sales. Instead, I was kind of speaking details on your network. And then I started realizing that there were a bunch of things that I wasn't really bringing up. Like I would quote them, but I really didn't show, like, that there was deficiencies, or really didn't do a good job probably in building the value of why they might need something. So I just take the canned reports and the data collection tools, and I always did cobble it together in Word and Excel, and I will or gray. So if you're sitting across from a prospect and this thing's upside down, for them, they can't really see your cheat notes, right? What's the impact to your business? How urgent is this to resolve? So I want them to tell me how to sell to them first. So I'm gathering, and then I'm gathering some other facts here. Technical point of contact. I want to find out what they're currently doing. Is there an IT? I always ask, and I start to stir up the pot about the E&O insurance. They give me all the information I need. That'd be like going to the doctor and withholding information. It's only going to hurt you in the end, right? What I do is I say, listen, I understand if you're not comfortable, give me an exact number. Maybe you'd be comfortable with a range. If they say, a company of your size, I'm, based on what I see, I'm going to guess you're probably spending, around $1,000 to $1,500 a month. They start to get shifty in their seat, and they'll go, well, we're not spending that much. 500 and 1,000. They go, yeah, it's probably more in that range. So they end up telling you anyway. You just have to kind of know how to manipulate the conversation. So maybe we hit the wall is when somebody says, no, we don't pay anything. And so it's like a break fix kind of deal. And I'll say, well, how much? And maybe they don't know. So you can just plug in an even number, like $1,000 or $500, whatever, because of how that kind of looks on the report later on. But for now, that's kind of information that I'm looking to gather. And then I go through the other ones. I'm not information, so I know what I'm getting myself into. And then I have the template boxes here. And so this is helpful for me. So I know I have to come up with a bottom line summary statement on all this stuff. So, I'm doing my lines, right? So instead of gathering up every technical detail on the server and serial number and RAM and, RAID and all that stuff, because the client's not going to, prospect's not going to understand that technical minutia. That's for us to understand, right? So if you were a doctor and you went to med school, you make the patient into a doctor, right? You're the doctor, you're the expert. So you got to think the same way, right? So we're an MS. Our job is not to turn our prospect into an IT professional. It's to help them understand and score it, capture it in some sort of state, and then show them what they could have so they have something to compare it to, right? Because I would not until I know what they have and they truly understand what they have and what they're spending for. So I'm gathering up all my notes here. Feel free to use these fact finders. Take as much notes as you want. We always get the question, Mike, well, how does the data get into the system? Right? Our intent here was never to create another system with agents and things to gather up technical data. The last thing you need is another technical tool how's the data in there, and they're skeptical. Somebody else did a QBR, and one of my toughest client never buys anything, or we can't sell him anything, and he bought A, B, and C. This really does work. And then they're excited, and then they go use it on some other prospects and clients, and they continue to make money. And then we hear about that later, and that's really exciting for us. So after you come through and do the fact finder, then I come back, and usually within a day or so, I like to do that baseline audit because all that information is fresh in my mind. We use ConnectWise. I like to scan in the fact finder, and I attach it to the ConnectWise record. We're toying with attaching it right into the audit in your PSA tool, since that's where you have all the other information. So either way, and then I come in. So when I come in here, now I'm running through it. Now I like to answer the easy ones first. So what else, right? And then this is where I'm able to come in here and change the name and description for the plan. So feel free to put whatever you want in there. Here's where I'm capturing my range, right? So this is why I was trying to figure that information out. And of course, if you were going to do a telecom audit, you can capture that information in there. So good, we can save that. From there, we jump in and we actually start coming up with the summary statements. Go in there and I find out that they don't have a internet security appliance. Well, that's pretty easy. I click on summary statements, takes me right in, and I'm going to start clicking on those things first, right? I don't need a data collection tool or any kind of forensic analysis to tell me. I look in their closet and all I see is a cable modem and I see the switch attached to it. I know there's no firewall, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to edit the summary statement. Now, if we were to sit down as a group and we said, how many answers could we come up with, right, to fit this scenario, right? So let's come up with the green ones first. If you're lazy and you don't want to type anything, you can just pick satisfactory, right? I, of course, recommend that you come up with some sort of summary statement, right, like a tweet. So in this date. Now, you might say, well, I don't monitor our firewalls, like we don't have that capability, so I don't, and it's up to date. Security subscription is up to date. That's fine. Put in whatever you want, right? And that's why, it's flexible. But that answer a variety of different clients. So maybe the first time you do the audit, it takes a little bit extra time. You have to type some stuff in. You can speed your way through. If we were to come up with, hey, what's some of the yellow ones? Like I have one, hey, the Sonic Wall is in limited retirement mode and not the latest service reviews when I'm trying to upgrade and put in a new appliance. Maybe we say, well, you have an appliance, but it's not mine. Better than nothing, but we need to improve that. Or red, what would be red? Hey, there is no firewall. A lot of these that you could come up with ahead of time, type them in. The more you use the system, the more intuitive it becomes. So like in this case, try to not do that. I try to use ones that I can come up with in the future. But it's not cloud-based or managed. So maybe we pick that. So I can come through, use any kind of data collection tools. Also, the question we get a lot is, well, can't we pull all the data into from the data view? If let's say you were in an environment and there's 20 computers and you actually ran a data collection tool have one version, 5 have some other thing that's out of date, and 5 have nothing, right? You that data. You're the one that has to pick what's the summary statement, right? There's no way for us to artificially, through and then come up with something in your own words that you're going to be comfortable with discussing, right? That's up to you. So again, you put a little bit of time over again. So we work our way through. Now, there's always times where, we're going into an environment and figured out that they don't have, that's a little bit more important than what was on my template. So maybe like VPN really is of no significance to this. You want to say, I want to drag security awareness training on there and weight it as a 4. Maybe they talk to us. I just had a client recently that's about security, and we know our users are clicking on things. We need to get them educated right away. Well, they told me what's important. I know the question comes up, hey, what do you use? So I'm happy to say we use KnowBe4. I know there's other vendors out there, but in case anybody's here, and I'm going to say you have no security awareness training. So we're going to come through. I'm going to actually fill out, I'm going to go through this. Security, hey, there is none. Two-factor, we'll say there's nothing there. Managed DNS, we use Open. So there is nothing in email encryption. Let's say they're using Office 365. Okay, so what we're doing is we're coming up with a category. Spend us a second or two to explain how we come up with the scoring. So there's 9 boxes here. Let's pretend that every box 100 on a 100-point scale. All right. So every box was green, you get a 100. This would be 100. Every box was red, that represents yellow. It'd be a 50. Right. It's pretty simple. So it's either a 0, a 50, or a 100. Now, because we have we add up the 0s, the 50s, and the 100s, and we divide by 9. Except we have weighting in here. So if this is a 0, 0 times 5 is still 0, right? This is yellow. That represents the 50. And then 50, this would be a 100. 100 times 4 is 400, right? So we basically add up the weighted scores and out of everything with weighting, and that comes up with this score here. We have a white paper, explains it in greater detail. So if you're super techy and what happens if we vary. So we say, this is a 5. This is really important, most important on our 1 to 5. This is going to draw down on on this score of this section. If I say, well, it's a 1, you see how our score actually improves? Not as important. So you could see how that changes. Similarly, email encryption, well, that's just the 2. Not that important, relatively speaking, with the other ones. If we made that a 5, you see it's a 41. Now, this is a little bit of right? There is no higher authority that's going to come in that's going to say, oh, no, email encryption is clearly not a 2. MSPs. So you figure out, what the weighting should be and go with it. I wouldn't spend too much time. When you're done, you save it. And eventually, when you complete all of the sections, what it's going to do, it's going to generate an actual. This would be representative of one that was completed. In this case, what we did is, the baseline. There's 3 suspect or a client. It doesn't matter, what it is, whether it's a QBR or just for first-time audit on the prospect. So you could say, hey, I want to clone the baseline plan as a proposed plan, and that'll come up here. And then this represents as what I'm proposing. And what's nice is it carries all the information over all the boxes, all the weighting, even what the answers are. And then, if you're perspective of what you're proposing to them. And then from there, what you're able to do is, as a client, clone it as a QBR, right? And you rename it. Hey, this is quarter 2, 2017, and QBR, and then you clone that one, and you have the next QBR. Now the scores could go up or down, right? I mean, there's times where we're at a certain, maybe they were at a 95, and then we do a QBR, and they're at a 91, and they go, what happened? And maybe we say, not doing security awareness training, or you're not using cloud to cloud backup, right? Because let's face it, technology changes, and telling them what's out there. So this is how we do it. So before I actually jump into this, some real,
we have questions about monthly effective monthly IT expense. I don't know if you're going to talk about that coming up, or if you want to chat about that now.
Yeah, let's talk about it on the report, since we're going to pull a report up right now anyway. So let's go to a prospect that we them up here and go into their audit trail. And this is where they're at right now. They're at a 22. As the limit here, we give you the ability to compare 2 audits in a where you only show 1. So what I did for this particular prospect was I said, let me show them 1 report first. With we work our way through the presentation, I'm going to pull out a second audit that's going to compare 2 options, right? And my options were going to be 2 River Cloud or Riverwatch Complete, which is our managed services all-you-can-eat plan. And I'll let them choose, right? You want the premium plan, or do you differential? But to answer Mike's question, what I did, I generated the report. I simply hit print report, no comparative data, and I click generate report. And in seconds, I have my report. Now, again, I can't emphasize enough how long this used to take me to create something, and I changed it every time. So I couldn't even measure whether it was working or not, because every time I did, it was something different. Here, it's branded, prepared for them. I give them a copy, I have a copy, and we work our way through it. So let's get right to the summary impact page, and we can address the this is a prospect. They're a law firm. They are spending somewhere between, but they're spending it as break fix, right? So $500 one month, nothing the next, $2,000 the next, etc. That's the range. And obviously, you can see here, when I did this presentation yesterday, I went through it with them, and I said, well, you scored a 22, so in many cases, we could argue that you're getting what you're paying for, which is very little, right? And I told them, I said, this is a visual representation of your environment. Emotional side kicks in, and they're like, wow, that's a lot of red, or oh my God, we didn't get any green in this one, or they'll say, wow, look at this security area, like we've got a lot of problems. Like, what is all that? So I'm drawing them in. They're asking me like to see more, which is great, instead of me force feeding it. But then I talk about the expense. I told them, I said, you're probably spending more than you think here, but I went with what they kind of thought as their estimate, $250 to $300 a month. And I told them, basically, that's effectively like spending somewhere between $1,200 to $1,300 a month to get to a 100. Now I tell them that's based on straight line extraction, and rarely is this ever a straight line, right? Could be a more curvy line where it's even higher, or it could be a little bit slightly less curvy line where maybe $50 to $300 a month isn't going to cut it, right? We can see what the results are. What I'm doing is I'm framing this for that right now. Before I start trying to sell them things, I want this to sink in. And believe me, when they start enough red and yellow here, they really start to kind of get concerned. And then what I did was I went into the detail, and I said, let's look at infrastructure first. Now I'll walk you through quickly, because I'm assuming example. So, you know, they had a workstation. It was acting as a peer-to-peer server. There was no RAID in there, a single drive, right? That's their quote-unquote server. So I'm going to point that out. That's pretty bad. They decided to go easy on them and show it as a yellow instead of a red. They had a Drobo attached to this workstation, right, with redundant drives. So it's kind of funny that we have redundant drives on the backup, but not on the actual computer that's, you know, serving up the data. So although they have that, there's not a BDR. They're only doing file and folder. There's no, you know, snapshots. So I'm going to show it as a yellow. Business continuity, let's face it, it sucks. Like, they're not a good way to continue the business. If there's fire, they're screwed. Everything's going to burn up, right? They've got no offsite backup. They've got no ability to virtualize. They have one workstation, right? There's no redundancy whatsoever. Workstations, ironically, were pretty good. Their email was over at Office 365. Great. They had no backup. They didn't even know what I was talking about. So I'm going to show that as poor. Remote accessibility, a couple people use Go to My PC or the like Google product. I don't know what it's called. The switching, only 10/100 is not gigabit, and no managed wireless whatsoever. Had was no firewall. Antivirus was all over the place. They actually had an anti-spam filter because they had, and that was there because they originally thought that I'd be able to go in there and do some sort of post-incident report. But I told them it would probably be impossible without having any and then do forensics on that. So somebody else.
Question, Frank, about somebody asked, what is Chrome Remote Desktop, or they're just a Chrome?
No managed service provider, so of course managed services was terrible. That was a 0, right? So afterward, an opportunity to kind of just, you know, further my discussion as to, you know, why maybe a server or something that's more enterprise disaster recovery. And I don't read through all these, Mike. You know, I usually reference them. So I say, you know, once I leave and you want to kind of look for those audit items and why it's important. We are working feverishly to catch up. We've added a lot of audit items into the system. We're trying to more infographics in there. So this was the report. It was kind of standalone, and this is what we started with. Now, in this firm said, well, what do you recommend that we do? So I said, oh, I'm glad you asked. So I had, so what I did was I started with the higher plan first. So when I said print report, I said I want this one here, the Riverwatch one. So I get to pick what I want to compare it to. And I left the infographics out. I didn't feel like I needed to create this report. And so what I did was I went through this one. And I said, you know, this is the platform that's being used by the company that referred them to me. They use this. And I said, as you can see on this page, Mike, they cut me off. What did they say?
What's the, why is there still a red box there?
Exactly. Anyway, I'll get to that. So yeah, they asked me, what's with that red box, okay? And I said, all right, I'll tell you in a minute, but you can see that now the goal is to have the green and to get our score to 100. So I said, let's talk about the numbers here real quick. I said, 29.17. So they said, wow, it's a lot more than we're spending. I said, yeah, true. However, it gets you to where you need to be. And under our scenario, there's no more servers. You don't need a BDR. It's all in the cloud. Business continuity is always, and I went how I've remediated every single thing here. And this was important because before I can sell them anything, I have to make sure they understand. And I came down to here, and they told me that there was no way that to put a mobile device management agent on the phone, right? So normally, if I was just on the proposal, and I did, and I didn't quote it. They told me they didn't want it. I'm not going to force it down their throat. But Mike, do you think I should let them off the hook? I mean, this is something as an MSP, mobile, your devices, right? And it's not like I invented
Absolutely.
it. I'm sure everybody on this call is like, yeah, you need mobile device management. So maybe this firm at this stage has decided that, no, we're not going to do that. And that's fine. If they become my client, every quarter, mobile device management is going to be red. And here's why. At some point in the future, if they're my Joe, the majority partner, lost his phone, can you lock that phone or wipe it out or tell me where it is? And we're not using any sort of mobile device management. And they're going to go, well, why aren't we? Or they're going to say, well, how much is that? They're going, oh, well, can we get that? And I don't want to be in a position where I look foolish that the reason why that here I could say, yeah, we've been telling you every quarter. And I'll guarantee you eventually this red box will bug them so much that they'll say, how much is that? All right. That's what I would carry forward. So I ran through
this. If you want to add to that, you really want to be persuasive to get. When they say they don't want to switch to, they don't want to improve that, have them sign that red box. And this is, if something happens, this is not on us. You signed this to prove, you go back when the person does try and blame you when that does happen and it goes wrong, you pull it up, hey, you signed it.
Yep.
So,
yeah, we call that like a declination of service, right? It's coverage. So
exactly.
Good. I like it. So then I said, let's take a look at an alternate plan, one that does not involve cloud. Look at what that one looks like. And now they look at this and they go, oh, well, there's a bunch more red and there's some yellow. We only have an 81. And of course I say, yeah, but it's also only $17.97. It's less expensive. It's a little bit more upfront because we have to buy hardware now, but your monthly is less. But you also don't have as high a score because there's certain things that I just can't remediate unless we're putting you in the cloud. So now I'm making the argument already why the premium plan is better. But nonetheless, we go through here. Now I talk about business continuity, like you still won't have a server. In this case, I think we were going to put a Datto NAS that has backup capabilities, but we still have to invoke things, right? If the power's out or whatever, it can't just work from anywhere. We'd have to do so. Anyway, physical security is still a concern because I got to put that NAS in there, but there's no locked area in that office, right? So that's a concern. We work our way through it, good old mobile device management. And then I'm able to compare the two. And I say, so here's what you need to decide. Would you rather go with the cloud, and we can give you a demo if you'd like to see that, at $29.17, or we can go with our, and you still have some things here that you're assuming some risk, but it's $17.97 a month. So I give them the either or option. Pick one or the other. I'm pretty sure you don't want to stay at a 22 in what you're doing today. So that's how I presented that one. What I do want to do is jump into one that's an actual client, because I want to show you what we do in a upsell opportunity. So if we go to the Community YMCA and I go to their audit trail, you could see that we actually have done a couple QBRs with them, right? So we did 2 last year, and looks like we missed the first quarter of 17, but we did here. So they were hovering at a 90, and then we came in and they are at an 85. So I'm going to show you what we did here. In here, which what brought their score down. So we added a couple things that we weren't doing before that we have today available to us, right? So we talked about how we added the know before security awareness training. So what I did was I took one of the boxes that was here before, that was green, and I removed it, and I put a totally different audit item on the report, security awareness training. And then I removed another box over here that was green. In fact, we could go look real quick and let's just see what those were. Take a quick peek just so we know what I changed around. So it looked like I think I took off I think I took VPN off, and I think I took scalability off. Like they're kind of, less important in the grand scheme of things going forward. And they're already green, so I don't have to, worry about showing that every single, quarter. And I went in there and I put those both on the report. And then I generated my report. I didn't do a comparison on this one. I just did the thing. And I came in there and I showed this to them. And they said, well, what's the red and the yellow? And we talked about it. Now, a couple of these here, they security awareness training. I think they had 150 users, so I think we charged, I don't remember the exact amount, but I think we charged them $1,800 for the year for that, pretty good margin on it. We added two-factor authentication to the cloud platform, which I think increased or so. And we added cloud-to-cloud backup through Backupify. I think we charged them, I think there's so we added almost $700 a month of MRR, and we sold, security awareness training. Now, money and vice versa, good for them, is that we're bolstering their security. We're doing a better job, right? We weren't providing security awareness training on my client and pointing out that I'm not doing security awareness training and that I'm not doing cloud about is, you might want to run these on your clients before somebody else that runs it on them as a prospect, right? And it's a prospect for me, and I'm pointing all this stuff out. Who do you think they're going to go back to with this report? You. And they're going to, like, what's this deal with managed wireless, whatever. And now you're going to be scrambling. Oh, I could sell you that. I could say that, and I'm going to make you look bad. That, how do you drive the wedge without bad mouthing your competition? Well, this is how you do it. So there's 5 minutes left. Covered a lot of some of the scenarios and hopefully give you some sales ideas and tips and tricks of how to use it. I'll switch it back, and then we will part ways today.
Sure. I think the questions that were asked have been answered, but one of the questions that I think you already answered, because there's a couple of good questions. When you do an audit, how to fix it. So then what do you do afterwards once they are ready to take action? What's the next step?
Yep. So like Robbins talks about, the proposal should be nothing of showing them that, yes, what I've proposed in this other area on the audit, like where I say it's at $2,700 a month, shouldn't be working off of it. So that's how I do it. It's funny how this came about is and then one day I forgot. And so I was like, oh crap, I didn't print the proposal. So yeah, why don't I come back and you know, I can you know, I'll bring it. I think I convinced them to look at a demo. And when I came back about like 6 days later, they were really internally, we shared this with our current IT provider, and they didn't have any good answers. And they were so much more in a buying. So I don't show up with the proposals anymore, Mike. I did it by accident, and it was a good mistake. So now what I do is I show up with no preparation. I could say, yeah, you know what I'll do? I can send it to you electronically, like through Quozal or QuoteWorks or whatever. I use Quozal. Proposal of what I've already showed them that they're getting on here. Many times I like to sit down with them because I like to do some sort of like days, let this sink in, and then I sit down, I bring the proposal, and maybe we go through a quick demo. That seems to work best for me.
Having them ask you for the proposal as opposed to giving them a proposal. You know, when somebody asks for happening and they're ready to buy something, they're asking you to sell them something, as opposed to you handing them a proposal going, here.
Yeah,
So
and that's the whole thing with this too, is you're able to draw that out of them, right? So it's a process where the impact page, there's an emotion there. Hey, what's the red and yellow? Now you get drawn in and we explain that. Then they get to that point. Hey, then at the end, hey, can we see the proposal, right? They're asking you all the way through for the information.
All right. Next question is, what do you use for cloud-to-cloud backups? All right. And then the next question here is, how do you price your
I don't think there's any real benchmark for it. I can tell you that typically I'm charging $997 for the audit. Think I need to nudge it along, maybe I'll discount it and I'll say, you know, we are having a special for this month that we're discounting it down to $597 or $497, whatever. So you can discount it a little bit. I wouldn't give it away for free though. So $997 is usually a good price point. Now, and I should mention that our target audience is usually between 10 to say 30 workstations. So $997 for us is, you know, kind of fits in that range. You know, if we were going in and there was 100 computers, we would charge more and we would be a little more heavy on the forensics because, you know, a couple, right? I'm going to need to gather more data. So, you know, we would probably charge more for that.
Gotcha. I have another question, but I don't quite understand it. I was asking for clarification on this, but it's the last question here. I'll just read you what the person says. Audit for laptops or standalone. Do you do audits for that market, single user working from the road or home?
I personally don't. We don't really go after the residential marketplace, but you know, you can modify this to suit your needs. There's a lot of audit items in there. Many of those I don't use. The original list came from me, you know, as an MSP, and you know, we went into beta with this product, and we asked for feedback, and we asked for other things that people were using. Was that so? We didn't have an item for it, and one day someone's like, "Oh."
This is designed to be a system, a selling system. So when you print that report, what you've got in front of you is a sales. We order the pages in a certain way. We have things go from summary to more detail. That's all on purpose to create a system that will help you sell either to your current clients through QBRs, through upsell and cross-selling, or to your prospects. But it is flexible as well. You can add things, you can edit things where you can, and just give it a shot and try it. Definitely, you can't break anything by trying to run an audit.
All right, Mike, I think if that's all the questions we have, I thank everybody for spending the time. This was a little bit of, I know we're recording this, and we'll be putting this up on our site. So we appreciate the time, and we'd love to hear some feedback and the sales that you make because of audit.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and look for the recording to this webinar. And if you have any questions, Mike at audit4it.com, and reach out to anyone anyone in the company here. Brian is here.
Thanks, guys. Bye, Dan.